You guys, we are so back. Happy 2025. And welcome back to the Completely Clueless podcast. I am your host, Sarah Alice Liddy. I gotta start off with some honesty that this is not the first time I'm recording this episode. I have admitted to this in the past, and I've decided that I want to peel back the curtain a little bit. I don't talk a lot about the behind the scenes, the admin, and everything that goes into the making of Completely Clueless. Like, I don't break the fourth wall in that way, but we got to break the fourth wall today because it just feels inauthentic to continue on into this new year and new season without addressing something that has been weighing on me a lot when it comes to the podcast. So here it is. I'm really struggling with the podcast right now, you guys. Plain and simple, I'm struggling. And I want to talk openly and honestly about this because especially around this time of year, the holidays, the New Year's season, we are getting fed so many highlight reels. I feel like that's all I'm seeing on social media is like all the accomplishments that everybody made in the past year, all the wonderful things they're going to go on to do in 2025. And then I look at me and I look at my past year and I look at all the things I struggled with and I'm currently struggling with. And I'm like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. And it continues to compare and despair from there. And I feel like I cannot be alone in this. And so I just feel like in a world where we're exposed to everybody's highlight reel, which is really somewhere between 10 and 20% of somebody's actual life, it's important more than ever to be vulnerable. And where we can and where we feel comfortable peeling back the curtain and showing our humanity is so important. And while I feel so clueless about where this podcast is going to go, that is something that remains the North Star of me, my mission, and what I want to give in my content is vulnerability. Is that I am not a perfect human. Yes, I go through great, amazing things, and I also go through really, really hard things. And that every human, despite what their social media says, goes through that too. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what's going on with me right now in the podcast and give you guys a little BTS, right? So if you are new to the podcast, I used to have a co-host and her name is Audrey. And if any of you guys are wondering, Audrey and I are still the bestest of friends. There is truly no tea, no shade, no bad will or anything in us deciding to go our separate ways. If something isn't serving you, it's okay to acknowledge that and it's okay to move forward. And I think especially in our 20s, so much of the things that we go through is trial and error. Like I definitely feel like I'm in a trial and error phase of my life where I have to test things out to see if I like it, if it's going to work for me. And sometimes that can be really frustrating, right? Because you can give your time and energy to something and then you're like, wait, this isn't working for me. But that's just the time in our lives when we're figuring out what we want. And I think Audrey needed to enter a new phase of her life and try something new and different. And as her friend first, I'm never, ever, ever going to be mad at that. I'm always going to support her. So I honestly was so happy that she was so open and honest with me about what she wanted after we decided to take a break during the summer. And it's only going to be better for our friendship, right? Because at the end of the day, this stuff, while it's amazing and is so much fun and creatively fulfills you, friendships, relationships, family, the people you love are just so much more important than that, right? However, since losing Audrey, the podcast has changed so much. And I don't think I've really realized that until the last couple of weeks. I feel like the impact of the change that this podcast is going through is finally sitting and sinking in with me. And I'm going to walk you through some of those changes to kind of open up about why I've been struggling and why I've been so frustrated with the podcast. So number one is recording the actual podcast, you guys, is so hard, I don't know if I've said it already, but this is a re-record right now. Today is Thursday. I recorded 2 days ago on Tuesday, and I sat in this very position, in this very seat, and was trying to record this episode and was struggling to get through it. And honestly, a lot of my solo podcasts in this new era have been very frustrating to film because, believe it or not, you guys, it's really hard to contain a conversation with yourself. It's really hard to have a through line for 30 to 45 minutes. And so I often get very distracted when I, one, fumble my words, two, lose my train of thought, and three, I think I can be in my head a bit about like what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. Are people going to like the way I'm saying it? Are people going to resonate with it? Would this be a really good clip to put on TikTok and the podcast can blow up and I'm shot to fame? Like these are the things that are running through my head as I'm speaking to the camera. And also something that I didn't foresee in doing a solo podcast is that it's quite lonely, you guys. I know you're out there. I know you're listening. I see the numbers. And I wish I could just like grab a few of you and put you in my childhood bedroom so that we could like do this live, right? And have a conversation. I feel like that's what I miss the most about having a co-host is that I was sitting down with one of my best friends and we were being open and honest and vulnerable and clueless about our lives together and for our audience, right? And now I'm doing it alone. And honestly, it can make you go a little crazy. Like I just feel like it's a little discombobulating to be talking to myself, like at a camera. And I know there's a greater purpose in it in that there'll be people listening on the other side. And I think it's hard for me to envision or imagine you guys there, right? And stuff like that. And that's why communicating with you guys through DM has been so helpful for me because even though I see a number, like you don't know the faces to that number or the stories, et cetera, et cetera. So things have just been feeling very lonely. Like I know for me, what I love about podcasts and listening to podcasts are listening to people having conversations. Like my 3 top listened to podcasts are The Toast, What We Said, and Giggly Squad. And those are all friends, sisters that are hosting a podcast together and are having conversations. And I really miss that. And I wish that I had that again because it also makes the recording of the episode so much easier. I'm not in my head as much. I have time to breathe and to think about what I want to say next and to take a step back as well. Like when, like Audrey and I, when one of us was maybe having a hard day, like the other one could, carry that episode or, one person could step in and be the main interviewer when we were interviewing guests. And now it's all on me. And that can be really hard sometimes. And I hope I'm not sounding complaining. That's not my purpose of this either. It's just truly to tell you guys my thoughts and my feelings and how it's going right now. So yes, co-host not having one in terms of recording has been very hard. It's also been hard to not have a co-host because now all the responsibilities, admin and financial, are on me. Yeah, that deep breath. Yeah, that woof. Yeah. It's so hard. It's so hard. It is so hard to maintain this by myself. It's hard because I'm conceptualizing and like producing the episodes, concepting the episodes, recording it all on my own, editing it all on my own, trying to market it all on my own, thinking of ideas all on my own. Like it's really hard. And again, like sometimes I'm going stir crazy and I'm like, I wish I could have somebody else's creative mind and opinion and thoughts so that I wasn't in it alone. And sometimes I really do get that from my partner, like, oh, God bless them. Truly, God bless them. Last night, we were sitting in my bed right next to me, and I was just crying for like an hour, and they were sitting there with me, consoling me, and also like trying to work through ideas with me on how to make this thing better for myself and for the audience that listens. But taking on all the responsibility has been very overwhelming, even with leaving my job. And that's also because I struggle with my mental health. And so on days where I'm not doing as well, it can be very hard to get myself to do the things that I know are good for me. And I'm definitely working on that. And I'm definitely working on trying to lightly push myself in an efficient, effective, and healthy way. And some days it doesn't happen. Anyways, main point here is that yeah, doing it all on your own is extremely challenging. And then I haven't even gotten to the financial element of doing it all on your own. I was in such a different financial place when I started this podcast. Transparently, I was so privileged to have help from my parents, and they helped a lot with, helping me buy studios and helping me pay for my half of doing cool photo shoots and whatnot. And so now, like, I have zero money to give to the podcast. If I'm being completely honest, zero. No money available to give right now, especially because I'm not in a full-time job. So yeah, I can't afford the $125 studio to do an in-person interview in the city. And then I also can't bring interviewers to my childhood home, and I do not yet have a space for people to come to in the city where I can interview them. I also do not have the money to rebrand the podcast and to do a new cover by myself and to do some new logos and things like that, and other financial things that make this machine go. Like having the money at the beginning, like I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I think that helped our success early on, because think about when you look at social media, sure, we love seeing raw, real things. However, most of the time we're attracted to aspirational things, right? Like think of Alex Earl, and I think a lot of the conversation around her is people are so like in love with her or obsessed with her because they're also like, holy shit, this life that she leads is like something that I would only dream of, right? And so I think at the beginning of the podcast, we were able to afford things that gave a very distinct, image and brand to the podcast that people loved and thought was cool and very cheeky and cute. And I currently cannot sustain that and whatnot. And then I think just, yeah, doing everything on your own, it's very hard to give yourself to every single element of it, right? Like once I get to the end of recording and editing a podcast episode, I'm like, now I have to make clips for TikTok. And that's why I feel like I've fallen short there. And then, yeah, like, and now I gotta post on the Instagram story and all these things. And yeah, it can be hard. It's also so amazing and such a privilege at the same time. Like I cannot believe the impact that this podcast has had in the nearly 3 years, especially in that, we don't do terribly, but we're not doing the numbers. Oh, I'm saying we as if I still have a co-host. Anyways, I'm not doing the numbers that a podcast that can be monetized and is widely spread does, right? So yeah, and to be quite honest, I get hard on myself about that too. I'm like, gosh, it's almost been 3 years. Like, should I throw in the towel because there's really only 100 to 200 people listening a week? Like, is it worth it? And then there's another part of me that says like, girl, like people can't even get like 5 people to listen to their podcast. Like that's amazing, like that's something to grow on and stuff like that. And so I definitely feel at this crossroads, you guys. I feel at this clueless crossroads where I'm like, is this thing not serving me anymore? And should I let it go so a new door can open, something better for myself can be there? Or do I stick with it? I think this part of a large part of my brain is like, I don't want to give up. I've put so much time and effort and energy and love into this thing. Like, I don't want to just throw it to the wayside. Also, I'm like, this has been my whole life post-grad is this podcast is like, this is what I have to show for the last 4 years. And simply just tucking it all away seems very extreme and feels like, now what? What would I have for myself? And then the last and final element of all of this is you're like, oh, Sarah, have conversations with people. You can do interviews virtually like you've done them before. And I have to be honest with you guys. I feel like I've said this before on the podcast is I'm just not the biggest fan of virtual interviews. I find them very hard to conduct because of like the Wi-Fi and the lagging that can happen often. I feel like the quality of interview that you get is like not the best. Like honestly, there's just something undeniable about being in a room with somebody and having a conversation. And like, to be quite honest, it's easier on the person that's interviewing or trying to lead the conversation. It can be really hard virtually because there's lack of social cues and understanding, right? Like we don't get to usually have 10, 15 minutes before we start even recording where we're just like, hey, like, thanks for coming. This is the studio. Like, all of that kind of stuff. And, maybe I need to like deconstruct that limiting belief and say, girl, these are your circumstances. And like, if you want conversation in this, like you got to do what you got to do to get it. Like maybe that's the route. But also like I hate doing things that are inauthentic to myself and where I feel like I'm pushing myself like too hard to be like somebody that I'm not. Like, sure, this is a performance at the end of the day. Like, I'm speaking to myself at a camera in my bedroom. And there's a lot of heart and authenticity in this that sometimes I feel like the virtual interviews lack because you have to push so much harder to get a good conversation than I feel like when you get one in person. So you're probably wondering, Sarah, like, why are you sharing all of this? Like, okay, cool. What's the point here? I'm getting to it. I mean, I addressed it a bit at the beginning in that vulnerability is so important to me. And I feel like showing you guys the harder parts or less perfect parts of my life will hopefully make you feel less alone in the imperfect parts of your life. And so I feel like giving you guys the full picture instead of just the end product just has so much value in it, right? Because it all goes back to that. We're always seeing the end product. We are always getting the end product on social media. We're never getting much of the process to get there. Or when we do get the process, it's very curated, very picture perfect, put a bow on it. And so I'm hoping that my chaotic mess of a process that I'm showing you guys right now can relate to what I'm assuming is a chaotic, messy process that you're going through in any part of your life. And last but not least, and I feel like this is maybe where I'm going to get a little bit emotional, so bear yourself, is that dreams are really hard. Dreams are really hard. Let that sink in, I think if anybody has ever had a dream, the beginning of it is so blissful. You feel so enlivened and so impassioned and so excited at what could be. And then reality hits. Circumstances change. You meet many speed bumps along the road of making that dream happen. And over time, all of those challenges can really weigh on you and bring you down, and you lose that joy and that bliss and that hope that you had at the beginning of embarking on this dream that you've had. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now, is that I'm meeting a very big speed bump and my car is so little and it's taking me so long to get over it. And look, I can't be 100% certain that Completely Clueless will always be here and be a part of my life. And I think a part of that makes me very sad. I'm getting choked up right now. And I feel like I'm not willing to throw in the towel just yet. I am working and trying to problem solve to make this outlet feel better than it currently does feel. And I'm hoping that that's something I can do this year. And in a year from now, or in a couple months, or in 2 years from now, whatever it may be, like this feels better to me. Something that I am going to be doing is bringing on my partner twice a month to record with me. Again, like I said, I'm like missing that conversational element. And at least in Olivia and I's opinions, we have really great conversations. And, I never want to be the content creator that uses their relationship for clout or money or anything. And so that's why I've always been afraid to include Olivia in this in a bigger way since I've gone solo. And honestly, They offered and I need their help. And I'm going to take the help right now because that feels a little bit more genuine and authentic than trying to schedule a bunch of virtual interviews and force it and whatnot. Anyways, you guys, okay, let's take a deep breath. I really wish we were moving on to a lighter, happier topic. And it definitely is in terms of content. This is not as deep as that conversation just was. However, I really thought I was going to be starting off 2025 sharing with you all that Olivia and I got our dream apartment and that in a couple weeks, I'm out of my childhood bedroom and I'm into the city with the person I love. Well, that is not happening, and it's probably not happening anytime soon, which is so sad. All right, the hot off the presses tea on my life is that Olivia and I got denied from the apartment that we put an application into. And this is disappointing for so many reasons. This happened the other day. And for context, we saw this apartment for the first time on October 2nd. So it has been a full 3 months of this apartment and the process of trying to get this apartment. So when we saw the apartment on October 2nd, an offer was put in right after. And look, I don't know much about the real estate world and timelines. We did have a little bump in the road because the co-op board needed us to do something because of the situation with how this apartment is being purchased. And then we got to fill out an application for the co-op board for them to approve. And so kind of like here's the process, right? There's somebody that's selling this apartment. And so we got approved by them. And then once you're approved by the person selling the apartment, they then put you up with the co-op board. And so in the city, a lot of buildings are owned by boards of people, the co-op board. And basically, they have the right of refusal. They have the final say in whether you can get this apartment or not. And so we had already jumped through hoops for this co-op board to give them exactly what they wanted in order to be able to make this purchase happen. We also ran into a lot of timeline delays because of the holidays. And we're assuming this is a religious co-op board because there were some holidays in November that they took off. So that made things go slower. And then obviously we just had the holidays and the new year, and so nobody's working during that time, right? With everything moving so slowly, sure, I did have this part of myself that totally detached myself because it really never felt like our apartment. However, it also gave me and Olivia time to do the exact opposite, which is dream and hope and get excited about a future in this apartment, right? Because I think when you are looking for a home to live in, like, in order for you to like really want to be there, you have to envision your life there. You have to think about, oh, is this where I want to cook dinner every night, sleep every night? Is this the neighborhood I want to be in? Like, do we see ourselves going beyond just the two of us in this space? Like, you think about the future, and because of the results, that's also been very challenging. However, back to kind of like the process of this story is that like another piece of context is that the people around us felt very positive about the outcome of this apartment. I cannot divulge all the financial details because that is not my business to put on the internet. However, what I can say is everything was solid and it was good and it was what you would want in this circumstance. Like what, a seller would want a buyer to have in this circumstance, right? And so everybody around us was like, yeah, why would this not work out? Like we're great candidates. This would be stupid, right? So yeah, it was a very shocking surprise when right after the new year, we got that denial letter. And at first I thought Olivia was joking. They sent me a text the other day and was like, hey babe, I don't think we got the apartment. I'm sorry. And I was like, you're joking. You're joking. You're joking. And they were not joking. They were not joking. And it's so weird because I feel like I should be sadder about this situation. And there are definitely parts of me that are sad. I'm most sad that I will not be living with my partner this month. Like, it's not happening this month. It probably won't happen next month. Like, it takes a little bit of time for these things to happen. And that makes me sad because I was so excited to start this next chapter with them and start building our lives together, right? We've been gearing up for this, you guys, since August. Since August, we have been in this apartment hunt. And sure, things have changed along the way, and that's why it's been taking longer, but it's been a lot of time envisioning, right? Like when you're hoping and excited for something and when it keeps getting pushed off and off and off, it can just be like so frustrating. So really that's what I'm most disappointed about, is that I won't be living with my partner soon. But I don't think I was that sad about the outcome in the end, because in my brain, and I like to consider myself a smart woman, but oh my God, what was that, you guys? Anyways, but in my brain, I'm sort of just like, okay, we jumped through all these hoops for this co-op board. Everything financially was good. What could be the reason? And in my rational mind, I'm like, okay, when they looked at who is going to live in this apartment, they saw two female presenting names, my name and Olivia's name, even though they're non-binary. And look, I don't think the co-op board would have loved that either, based on what I think is the reason that they denied us, is that they're homophobic and they don't want a queer couple living in their building. And they probably don't want a queer couple with the good financial standing living in their building either, because maybe they're jealous or they're intimidated or whatever it is, you know? And Olivia and I actually we had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago, because I was starting to get antsy and nervous, and I was like, what if you think they deny us because they're homophobic and whatnot? And Olivia looked at me and was like, why would we want to live there then? Why would we want to live in a building and a community that doesn't accept gay people? Like, I don't want to come home every day and be afraid. And that really hit for me and sunk in. And I was like, oh shit, like, you're right. Like, why would we want to fight and protest against people that aren't accepting of us? Because then, like, if say we got what we wanted at the end of the day, yeah, we're not feeling safe in our home, and that's really important, is being able to come to an apartment that you feel safe in. And because there's other people living in that apartment, you want a community that you feel safe in. You know, in my last apartment that I lived in with my friend, there was a queer couple that was literally an eye shot right down from us. We could see them cooking in their kitchen shirtless like all the time. I was like, yay for the gays. And so, yeah, I think my mind has gone to like, all right, these people just don't want us in their space. And ultimately, if you don't want me, you don't want my partner, you don't want our energy, then like, why should I be sad about it? Because eventually there will be a place that is accepting of us, or that, you know, is willing to pass us through. And that will be the place for us. You know, I think in these types of situations where you have to surrender and you have no control, all you can really say is, what is for me will not pass me. And what is meant for me will be. And so I had my cry about it. You know, I think Olivia and I sort of grieved the situation together. And then we were back on the horse, and we were like back on Zillow and Street Easy that day. I was starting to get nervous like a couple weeks ago. And so I started looking, and I had saved this one apartment that is pretty similar to the one that we were looking to hopefully live in. And so hopefully we'll get to see that soon, and maybe that'll work out. You know, everything happens for a reason. Like, I know that like literally, you guys, I've said like 3 cheesy lines like back to back. What is for me will not pass me. What is meant to be will be. What is the other one that I just said? Everything happens for a reason, right? I'm a cheesy girl today. Anyways, but I feel like in these situations, you have to be like, you kind of like, right. Like I said, you have to surrender and just say like, all right, I'm not in control of this, because that's the way through. That's the way of not dwelling and being angry and mad and sad and disappointed for an extended period of time, and is looking toward the future, you know? Olivia and I have not changed our stance in wanting to live together. And ultimately, that's at the heart of this, is building a home together and a life together. And so that is staying steadfast and strong throughout this. And whatever obstacles that we run into along the way, we go through together. And it's disappointing, but we still have each other. And that's like really what is all that matters in all of this, you know? So that's the apartment update. And again, I wish it was better news. It's definitely frustrating that we're going to have to literally go back to square one. And I'm a pretty picky girl, you guys. Like, I bet Olivia's a bit annoyed with how picky I can be about an apartment. However, for an investment like this, I just feel like we should have nearly everything we want, which I know is hard to get. And look, we have to sacrifice things like here and there. Like with this other apartment, like it was like a 5 to 10 minute walk away from the subway. And like for where it was, the size, like all these other things, like I was like, yeah, like of course. So I of course know we can't get everything we want. And you know, we're both living at home and like saving money and things like that. And while it's not the ideal situation and we obviously don't want to be here forever, I'm also like, I feel like if this is an investment and like we're going to be there for years to come, it should be something we really, really, really love. And especially after living in the city last year and going through that experience, I've just learned a lot about what I want and how important not only the apartment is, but honestly more important the environment is. It's like what part of town we're in and where is it near and do we like the places that are near and do we see ourselves being like going outside of our apartment and doing things in this neighborhood. You know, that's very important to me. Anyways, anyways, that is the tea on the apartment. I will keep you guys updated. Cross your fingers for us that we will find a place soon. NYC real estate and finding an apartment is just like such a bitch. And like, I really hope that once we find this apartment, like we're done apartment hunting forever in NYC because I don't know if my heart can take it. And so now that we have the decision about the apartment, and even though it's a decision we weren't hoping for, I'm happy we have a decision at all because I truly feel like the last 3 months of my life have been very much in limbo because we've been like, will this happen? Won't this happen? And I've sort of let everything in my life sort of be based on that. I'm not sure if that was the best thing ever, but it's what I did. Like, for example, you guys, you're going to judge me for this. I still haven't cleaned my room. I still haven't really unpacked and cleaned everything from moving back here in October. And like, that is number one goal of January. It has to be now. Like my mom was like, girl, like now that you're not moving, like you need to get that third floor looking better and sorted because it's a mess. And I agree with her. And I think it also contributes to my mind being a mess. You know, I'm very much like a person where my space kind of reflects what's going on with me mentally. And while like it's not dirty, like everything has a space, like I just haven't organized through things and thrown things out that I don't need anymore. And like my guest room, you guys, oh my God, my guest room is a disaster. And so now that I'm going to be here longer, like I definitely got to fix that situation. And honestly, I've been very in limbo with what I want to do with my career moving forward. We're honestly coming back full circle because, you know, I opened up about all the podcast things. And I think all the confusion with the podcast also blends into this cluelessness that I'm having with my career and like where I want to go next. I basically have like 3 plans in my mind: plan A, plan B, and plan C. And plan A is I get another corporate social media job. However, this time would be and have been applying to a lot of influencer marketing jobs instead of content creator jobs. I think what I can take away from my experience at the marketing agency being a content creator was that it burnt me out, and trying to do content creation as my 9 to 5 and then also trying to make it work for myself outside of work with the podcast and my TikTok, it was just too much. It was too much and I was creatively burnt out. So yeah, plan A, get a job in social media, in influencer marketing, hopefully, while trying to make the podcast and my content work for myself, and hopefully one day could leave that job. Plan B, and what I've been doing right now, is working a survival job while trying to make the podcast and my social media work for me. And this one has been sort of hard, especially financially. I'm not going to lie. I'm working part-time right now at a bakery. I think I've told you guys that. And I'm just not making very much money at all. Like, it's painful. And I felt like I wasn't making that much money in my corporate job, and now this is like significantly less. And so I think that's been really hard because especially like, saving up for an apartment and furniture and even getting, things for the podcast. Like it's just not accessible right now with having a survival job and trying to do the podcast, on the side and make it my full-time gig. And, one could say that I could probably get a survival job that is full-time or that has more hours and better pay. And those are things that I'm exploring because plan C would be being a freelancer in social media and podcasting while trying to make my social media and podcast work for myself. And I feel like plan C is where my self-doubt and self-judgment comes in because I think there's this part of my brain that's like, it just seems like a very big mountain to climb. Like, how am I going to get the clients? Will this work for me? Will people want me to edit their podcast videos or their podcasts? Like, am I good enough to do this? Like, what do I charge? Like, I just have all these like questions and self-doubts in my mind. And I feel like I need to push through the self-judgment. I feel like something really cool and great could be on the other side of my self-doubts and self-judgments. And so I really hope that I can continue to work up to, a freelance business where I can help people with their podcasts because that's something I've been successful at on TikTok is a lot of people like have found my page looking for advice on how to podcast because people do not like go behind the curtain about podcasting. There's a lot of like things that are gate kept and people don't know how to do. So I love being able to like offer that advice. However, like in my dream world, like I'm not somebody that's like, teaching people how to podcast or, editing their videos all the time, right? Like I think in my dream world, like, this is the dream. This is the dream, but obviously you got to do things to get there. Like need to make money to pay the bills and whatnot. But those are the plans that I'm circulating between you guys. And if you have any opinions on which ones I should go down, please help. If you have any leads on any of these paths, please let me know because I'm feeling clueless. I'm feeling completely clueless. Like, you guys, New Year, New Me is so out. It's New Year, same clueless me. And I can't wait to be clueless with you guys in 2025. We're going to find a way through. I'm going to keep pushing, keep doing trial and error and figuring out the new era of Completely Clueless. And for now, it'll be me. Olivia's coming on. We'll have some great conversations and hopefully I'll start to add some guests back here and there where I can. And just thank you all so much for being a part of this journey. For those who listen every week, like you have no idea how much it means to me and how much you keep me going with just listening or interacting with me on social media. Like it means the absolute world because honestly, at this point, like it's really what keeps me going. So with all of that being said, we have come to the end of the first episode of 2025. It took so much effort to get here, but I'm so happy we've gotten here. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode of Completely Clueless. If anything here resonated with you, please DM me. I think I'm going to start a broadcast channel soon so we can have some more lines of communication between us. In the meantime, please follow Completely Clueless on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at Completely Clueless Pod. And if you want to keep up with my personal journeys in life, you can follow me at Sarah Alice Liddy on Instagram and TikTok. And let's hope TikTok doesn't go away. All right. It's the only hope I have to get this podcast out here at this point because Instagram hates me. Anyways, have a terrific Tuesday, you guys. Have a wonderful week. And do not forget, be motherfucking clueless. Bye, you guys.